We are following the very latest developments in the mass school shooting in Georgia. A short time ago, 14-year-old suspect Colt Gray and his father Colin made their first court appearances in Winder in Georgia. Now, Colt Gray is charged with 4 counts of felony murder. Investigators say he killed 4 people and injured 9 others at his high school using an AR-style rifle. He will be tried as an adult. And authorities allege Colin Gray provided Colt with the AR-style rifle used in Wednesday's mass shooting. He is charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children.
All right, good morning, sir. Are you Mr. Colt Gray? Yes, sir. My name's Curry Mingledorf. I'm assigned to preside over this morning's proceedings. Mr. Gray, I do need to inquire as to whether you're able to read and write the English language.
Yes, sir.
All right. I also want to inform you, I want to ask you, do you understand that you have the right to be represented by an attorney in these proceedings?
Yes, sir.
And I want to inform you of the charges that you currently face. In essence, you are charged with 4 counts of felony murder, as outlined in the state warrants that have been issued against you. I want to make you aware that the maximum penalty for felony murder, so for each count, the maximum penalty is that you could be punishable by death, by imprisonment for life, without parole, or by imprisonment for life.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about the tragic mass shooting that happened out in Georgia at Appalachia High School by a 14-year-old student by the name of Colt Gray, who decided to take a rifle that was purchased as a gift by his father, Colin Gray, and to commit a mass shooting. Okay, he went into the school and started shooting. Unfortunately, tragically, 2 students lost their lives, 2 14-year-olds, and also 2 adults lost their lives as well, too, as a result of this mass shooting at the hands of the 14-year-old Colt Gray, who has been arrested and arraigned on 4 counts of felony murder and is expected to be tried as an adult, okay, after shooting and killing 4 people. Okay, his father, Colin Gray, was also arraigned on 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children. Now, this is because he provided his son with the firearm, although he allegedly knew that his son was potentially a threat to himself and others. And the reason why this is being alleged is because apparently the feds, the FBI, they were aware of Colin Gray and Colt Gray. About a year ago, they visited the 2 at their home because of suspicions that Colt Gray was on social media basically making threats to commit a mass shooting. Now, ultimately, nothing was done because they could not make a definitive connection in regards to the social media accounts belonging to Colt Gray, the 14-year-old. So nothing was really done.
Been sick since I heard the call yesterday morning.
Janice Mangum is the sheriff of neighboring Jackson County. Her department talked to the suspect and his father in May 2023 after the FBI passed on an anonymous tip about threats against a middle school posted on the social media platform Discord. According to the incident report, the threats were posted by an account set up with an email address linked to the teen, and its username referred to the 2012 Sandy Hook gunman. In an interview with investigators, the alleged gunman's father said he owned hunting rifles and that the then 13-year-old was allowed to use them when supervised, but does not have unfettered access to them. The suspect told the officer he hadn't used Discord in months and denied making any threats. "I got to take you at your word, and I hope you're being honest with me," the officer said, adding, "I'm not saying you're lying, but it's a serious thing," the teen responded. "It's not unusual for people to lie to the police," the deputy said. The suspect's dad responded, "He's familiar, and I am too." With conflicting information about who the account truly belonged to, there was not probable cause for an arrest.
Now, despite this, the father decided that, hey, it's a good idea for me to go out and buy my son a rifle. And that is what he did. And apparently there was not good safety precautions used in regards to keeping the rifle locked up and out of reach of his son so that his son wouldn't be able to just take the rifle and do whatever he wanted with it. Now, this story is getting national news attention for various reasons, okay? It is election season, and we know that Democrats, the left, instead of mourning the loss of life, the tragic loss of life that happened as a result of this shooting, they immediately decided to politicize it, which is interesting because after the failed assassination attempt on former President Trump, the same mainstream liberal media was begging people not to politicize it, okay? You're not supposed to point fingers, okay, at the Democrat rhetoric that, in my opinion, was probably responsible for that shooter deciding to try to assassinate the President of the United States. No, you can't do that, right? You cannot politicize it. You must simply just acknowledge that it happened and keep the politics to yourself. Except Democrats never do that when it comes to mass shootings that they feel fit the narrative that they want to push in order to ban guns, which is what they're doing right now. And it seems as if the mainstream liberal media has went a little bit too far trying to smear Republicans and to blame Republicans for what happened. And some of these liberal media outlets have egg on their face after they ran with an out of context quote that was made by JD Vance in response to the mass shooting.
Well, in the wake of the heartbreaking and deadly shooting in Georgia, the left-wing media is exploiting the tragedy to twist Senator JD Vance's words about the shooting. Watch this. This is the Associated Press. They accused Vance of calling school shootings, quote, a fact of life. You are looking at the headline. It reads, quote, JD Vance says school shootings are a fact of life, calls for better security. But wait, here is what he actually said.
Then we have to think about how to make this less common. Now look, the Kamala Harris answer to this is to take law-abiding American citizens' guns away from them. That is what Kamala Harris wants to do. But we have to ask ourselves, we actually have been able to run an experiment on this because you've got some states with very strict gun laws, and you've got some states that don't have strict gun laws at all. And the states with strict gun laws, they have a lot of school shootings. And the states without strict gun laws, some of them have school shootings too. So clearly strict gun laws is not the thing that is going to solve this problem. What is going to solve this problem, and I really do believe this, is look, I don't like this. I don't like to admit this. I don't like that this is a fact of life. But if you are a psycho and you want to make headlines, you realize that our schools are soft targets. And we have got to bolster security at our schools so that a person who walks through the front door we've got to bolster security so that if a psycho wants to walk through the front door and kill a bunch of children, they're not able to.
Now, under pressure, the AP quickly fixed their headline, deleting their tweet and adding that Vance laments school shootings. But that didn't stop the Washington Post, the New York Times, ABC, NBC from stirring the pot with headlines like these. Democrats, Charlie, here's Democrats. They're still doubling down on the lie. Kamala Harris, school shootings are not just a fact of life. It doesn't have to be this way. Kamala Harris headquarters, JD Vance responds to the deadly shooting of Georgia by saying it's a fact of life. Hillary Clinton, we know regular mass shootings aren't a fact of life, quote Vance, or something that we just have to get over, quote Trump. They're just doubling down on these lies, acting like these two candidates don't care about children and shootings, and they very clearly do.
Yeah, and I think it's because of what you just said, Harris. It's because, the damage was done as soon as they posted it, and of course it cost them nothing to take it back down. But, the Associated Press has enjoyed, for many, many years has been sort of the most authoritative, most immediate voice for disseminating the news, and this is what they've become. They're after clickbait, is what they're after. They're trying to come up with the most the most clickbaity sort of headline that they can come up with, and they do a very good job of teeing off so that everybody on the left knows the notes to hit, and then they all start hitting them, and then they can pull it back later. And but the damage is done.
So when do we believe them?
Yeah, so you've seen that, you heard that. Unfortunately, we have Democrats and the liberal media trying to use the deaths of these four individuals, plus those who were injured, in order to make a political point, okay? They are trying to use tragic deaths in order to score political points against Republicans. This is what they're doing. Okay, and they're openly doing it. And the reason why you know that this is what they're doing is because they're taking something that JD Vance said out of context and trying to spin it into something that is not, right? I mean, we saw the full context of the clip in which JD Vance said that I don't like the fact that this is a fact of life, but it is. I don't like that it's a fact of life. But they left that part out of it, okay? Because if they were to actually use JD Vance's full quote, then they wouldn't get clicks, right? It wouldn't be newsworthy, okay? But what's newsworthy to them is a Republican having his speech or what he's saying taken out of context to try to make it seem like he's saying that, well, this is just something that we got to deal with, right? There's nothing that can be done about this. It's just a fact of life, right? That's the narrative that they're trying to spin here, okay? But again, they left out the rest of what JD Vance was saying, in which he not only said that he doesn't like that it's a fact of life, but he also went on to talk about the need for more security at schools and other things that can be done outside of just banning guns. But because these people really just want to ban guns, okay, they want to take away people's Second Amendment rights, they use stories like this, they use tragedies in order to advance their own political careers, right? That's what's happening. It's sick, twisted, and it is evil, right? That is what these people are participating in, okay? They love doing this, right? They love trying to pretend as if they're standing on some type of moral high ground when what they're really doing is that they're trying to enrich themselves while pretending to be taking some type of moral stance. And that's just simply not the case, okay? Because what this is about Democrats trying to smear Republicans and trying to accumulate more power and control. That's what it is about. And the reason why you know this is because despite the fact that people like Joe Scarborough were told that, hey, this whole fact of life thing was kind of taken out of context, Joe Scarborough still uses this segment to smear and to blame Republicans for why this happened, claiming that we need more common sense gun laws.
Now's not the time to talk about safe storage, and now's not the time to talk about red flag laws. Is ridiculous because, you'll hear people go, oh, well, there's no gun legislation that would have helped this or that or the other. Yeah, there is. There always is.
Well, Jonathan Lemire mentioned Vice Presidential candidate JD Vance's take on this matter. Take a listen.
States with very strict gun laws, and you've got some states that don't have strict gun laws at all, and the states with strict gun laws, they have a lot of school shootings. And the states without strict gun laws, some of them have school shootings too. So clearly strict gun laws is not the thing that is going to solve this problem. What is going to solve this problem, and I really do believe this, is look, I don't like this. I don't like to admit this. I don't like that this is a fact of life. But if you are a psycho and you want to make headlines, you realize that our schools are soft targets. And we have got to bolster security at our schools so that a person who walks through the front door we've got to bolster security so that if a psycho wants to walk through the front door and kill a bunch of children, they're not able to.
And guys, there were school resource officers in the Georgia high school. In Appalachia High School, they confronted the shooter, possibly preventing much worse carnage. So there were some of those precautions taken at this high school that Senator Vance is talking about. And the truth of the matter is, he's right, that at this moment, this is a fact of life. And in fairness, his full comment was, I don't like that this is a fact of life. He said, we don't have to like the reality we live in, but it is the reality we live in. So you would think that would prompt him then to say, let's sit down and change this reality. Let's sit down and do something about it, because clearly having the school resource officers there who acted heroically the other day and probably prevented more kids and teachers from dying, it wasn't enough to save the poor people who did die.
So that comment that he made right there is another very, very stark example of the difference between these two campaigns, Harris-Walz versus Trump-Vance. They see it, Trump-Vance, as a fact of life, and Kamala Harris immediately said after the shooting, this is a choice we're making, and we have to make a different choice. People don't want this to be a fact of life.
No, mothers don't want to fear.
Nobody wants to choose this.
Fathers don't want to fear sending their children to school, wondering whether they're going to see them when they come home. Children don't want to go to school, terrified by it. And Charlie Sykes, it doesn't have to be a fact of life. Or as Donald Trump said, I believe it was in Iowa, we have to just get over it and move on. Well, it's a fact of life because Republican legislators, mainly Republican legislators, in Washington, D.C., and in state legislatures across America won't support common sense, basic gun safety legislation that the overwhelming majority of Americans support. And that is why this is a fact of life brought to you by the Republican Party. It just is. The guns are in the hands repeatedly of these children, of these mentally deranged people. Why? Because any type of gun safety legislation, and in Georgia, we're talking about locking your guns up in your homes, safe storage, red flag laws, the things that would have helped here. Republicans say no, no, no.
Yeah, so you've seen that, you heard that. Now, despite Joe Scarborough's colleague stating that, hey, yeah, JD Vance's comments were taken out of context, Joe Scarborough decides to still take the opportunity to smear Republicans, right? And to try to blame Republicans for this mass shooting, even though he has no proof or evidence that Republicans actually are responsible for these mass shootings, okay? And I'm going to tell you guys why. Because Joe Scarborough, just like a lot of Democrats, and this guy claims to still be a conservative, right? But to me, clearly, he's just like all of the other never-Trumpers, right? They're actually really Democrats at this point. And that's why these people basically agree with Democrats on everything, right? They never push back. But this guy is basically claiming that, yeah, if we had more common sense gun control, then this would have been prevented, right? This is what he's heavily implying, right? If Republicans get on board with the Democrats' agenda to confiscate people's guns, because that's ultimately what they want to do, and you know that's what they want to do, because all of the gun laws, the common sense gun regulations that these people want, none of these things would have actually prevented the mass shooting from happening, or at least there's no evidence that they would have prevented the mass shooting from happening. Let me explain. Joe Scarborough cites two things, right? Storage laws and red flag laws. Well, the issue with storage laws is there's no evidence that storage laws would have prevented this, because ultimately it is hard, really hard to enforce these gun storage laws, mainly because a lot of these laws only really kick in after a child gets access to the weapon, right? So it's not like you have police kicking down people's doors and checking and making sure that, hey, is your gun stored, right? Is it stored safely? Is it locked up so that children can't get access to the gun? No, that's not how it works, right? What happens is that people get punished for it after the child gets access to the gun. That's when the law actually kicks in. And in this case, just like in the case of Michigan, the parents were charged, right? In this case, you had the father. He's facing charges, okay, which means he's been held responsible for his child committing that mass shooting, just like the parents of Ethan Crumbley were held responsible, accountable for their child committing a mass shooting, right? So the whole gun storage law thing is just, to me, a silly argument. That would not have done anything to prevent this from happening, because ultimately it comes down to the parents. In this case, the parents failed, right? Which is why the father is being held accountable. Then they want to talk about red flag laws, right? In this case, yes, Georgia does not have any red flag laws. However, the FBI had already investigated this situation involving this child, okay, and they could not make any definitive connection to actually do anything. And I'm not saying that something shouldn't have been done, because I think it is obvious that this child was facing some mental issues that the father should have been aware of and should have been wise enough not to buy his son a gift, knowing that his son was going through some of these mental issues or being accused of wanting to commit these acts of violence. But when you talk about the red flag laws that would have applied in this situation, had Georgia had red flag laws, essentially what the left would be advocating for is for the feds to be able to confiscate all of the guns from any individual who lives with somebody who could be mentally ill, right? This is what they would be advocating for, because that is what would apply in this case, right? Okay, this guy's son has some mental issues, therefore all the guns of the father should be confiscated, even though the father is a legal gun owner, okay? That is what the left would be asking for in a situation like that, because it is already illegal in Georgia for a child to have a gun unless under very strict circumstances. Like, for example, you're hunting, you're going to the gun range, something like that. And it has to be under the supervision of a parent. Okay, so again, ultimately, this comes down to the parents, right? It comes down to the fact that the parents in this situation were reckless, particularly the father, okay? And the father is being punished for it. The father most likely is going to go to prison for what his son did. So I'm not sure which laws would have prevented this, right? I'm not sure exactly how this would have been prevented by any of the laws and legislation that the Democrats and the mainstream liberal media are currently asking for and blaming Republicans for not passing, outside of flat out banning guns, which is what I think these people want to do. And I just wish they would be honest about it. Stop pretending as if they have solutions to the problem, okay? And just say, hey, you want to ban guns, because that's what you want. You just want to ban guns, because none of these things you're talking about would have prevented this from happening. Not in my opinion. I haven't heard any convincing arguments in regards to how red flag laws would have prevented this, especially considering how this situation was already checked in on by the feds, by the authorities, and hey, they really couldn't come to any conclusion about whether or not this 14-year-old was actually a real threat. They could come to any definitive conclusion. So I'm not sure how that would have applied, unless you're advocating for people to have their guns taken away based off accusations, right? So, for example, you could accuse somebody's child of being mentally ill or being a threat to commit a mass shooting, and you might not be able to prove it, but you have some reason to believe it, and therefore the federal government should be able to just take away their guns as a precaution, right? Unless that's what they're advocating for, which, you know, they could be advocating for that. I don't know. I just wish they would be specific, right? When you come out here and you talk about what you want to do, be specific about it, right? Don't give me this generic nonsense about, well, we need more red flag laws. We need more storage laws. Okay, no, get specific, because just saying red flag and storage laws, in my opinion, those things would not have prevented this. But what would have prevented this is responsible parenting. And in this situation, the father is being charged. He's being held accountable, which hopefully is a signal to other parents who are buying guns as gift for their children that, hey, you need to be responsible. You need to make sure that the guns are securely stored, right? Which is, again, something they should want to do regardless of whether or not there's a law in place, but should understand that, hey, if you don't take the proper precautions to make sure that your child doesn't just take the gun and goes and commits some mass shooting, or is reckless with it, or is using it without your supervision, then yeah, you're going to face consequences. You're going to go to prison. The laws are already in place. The laws are already in place. So what are you really asking for? I just wish these people would tell the truth. Stop politicizing all of these mass shootings to blame Republicans as an excuse for you wanting to ban guns. Just come out and say, we want to ban all guns. Just say it. Just say it. Because that's what these people really want. So at the end of the day, I'm sick and tired of Democrats always politicizing every mass shooting, okay, in order to push their agenda. And I think that the American people get tired of it as well, too. Because ultimately, they don't have the support to do what they really want to do. So what does that tell you? That tells you that everybody can see right through this. Everybody can see that you are politicizing it, okay? And ultimately, at the end of the day, yes, when you have a society where you have the right to bear arms, okay, yeah, you're going to have things like this happen. You're going to have people that are going to be reckless. But again, that is why you have laws in place to punish those people who are reckless. And that is how this situation is currently working out. So again, I'm not entirely sure what could have been done to prevent this, but I don't think that the Democrats have the solutions that they claim that they have, because ultimately, and they really just want to get rid of the Second Amendment. They're just too cowardly to come out and to just say exactly what they want to do. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.